My name is Greg Chaplin. I'm a physical therapist and strength conditioning specialist, and in this video we're going to show you how to use a deadlift variation to improve hip range of motion. So without further ado, let's jump right in. So one of the most ridiculous things that I'm seeing on a regular basis on threads, Instagram posts, all sorts of things, is people thinking that you have to use these extreme positions to stretch in order to improve range of motion or mobility, whatever that means. And really one of the most effective ways to improve mobility is just to execute basic weightlifting and basic movement patterns with precise form. And so we're going to give you an example here of how you can use a deadlift variation to improve hip internal rotation, and we'll show you in real time. So we're going to test on the table the hip internal rotation. I'm going to show you the deadlift variation, and then we're going to retest it. We're going to show you how you can get very effective, quick changes that are going to last because you're loading them versus doing them in these extreme positions that aren't exactly going to transfer over. And then we'll break it down a little bit further after that. So without further ado, let's jump right into that. So to measure our hip range of motion, we're going to bring the knee up to about 90 degrees. We're going to keep that knee above the hip. We're going to swivel out, and as we can see, not much hip internal rotation there on the right, and not much there on the left. Now I should also mention that I did just get off a 7-mile run, so I'm limiting my hip internal rotation during that activity in order to achieve certain performance outcomes. So now I want to restore that motion after I've done that activity so I can go about my day with as much hip range of motion as possible. So let's jump into this deadlift variation, and then we'll retest and we'll show you what we did. So to perform this variation, we're going to make sure we keep the back relatively straight. We're going to bend the knees so the shins come over the middle part of the foot. We're going to have most of the weight through the ankle and heel of the foot. We're going to keep the back relatively straight as we shift the hips back. And then we're going to exhale in this position as we shift the hips back a little further. We're looking for a little bit of a stretch in the lower aspect of the pelvis, right around where the tailbone is. And we're going to make sure we keep the inner part of the foot down. So we're going to feel the inner heel and the base of the big toe. We'll do a couple more breaths in this position. Okay, and that's just one round, and that probably should be enough to get us some results. So let's go ahead and check out. Testing the right. And as we can see, almost doubles up the range of motion on that side, and testing the left, and pretty much the same thing. So for those of you who want to understand exactly how we're getting this hip range of motion, let's take a look. So if we look at the musculature down here towards the lower aspect of the sacrum, if this musculature is in a state where it's shortened or concentric, what we're going to have is a position of the sacrum that's tucked under like this towards what we would consider to be nutation. And under these circumstances, we're going to have a little bit increased muscle activity in the deep hip external rotators, the posterior outlet of the pelvis, as well as the inferior portions of the glute max muscle. And so what this is going to do, in addition to having that counter-nutated position of the sacrum, is it's often going to bias the ilium bones out like this towards external rotation, and the femur will come with it. So you'd see this commonly in someone, let's say, that had a sway back posture, for example. So in terms of our positional goals, we want to get nutation of the sacrum to open up this space here in the posterior pelvic outlet to get a more eccentric or lengthened position of those deep hip external rotators and also inferior portions of glute max. So the best position in order to do this is to bring the hip towards a 90-degree position and then get a little bit counter nutation here of the sacrum as well as that internal rotation of the ilium bones. And what you'll see is if we do that, all this muscle here has to go into a lengthened state as we go into that position. If we can do that, when we retest on the table, we'll be able to do that hip internal rotation motion that we weren't in the first place. So there you have it, guys. We used a deadlift variation to improve hip range of motion. We didn't have to use any extreme positions or any sustained stretching that doesn't last. This type of loading is going to be more likely to promote longer lasting changes. Now, the caveat here is that you need to be able to precisely perform this motion, and there are some things and some skills that you're going to have in order before you're going to be able to do this effectively. So if you need help with that, go to chaplinperformance.com and book a movement consultation, and we'll see if you're a good fit for a movement coaching program. Otherwise, if you like the video, go ahead and like it. If you have any questions, leave them below in the comments, and hopefully we'll see you in the next video. Peace.